Welcome to Ordinary Effort. We're a bunch of random fans, get some random baseball players, and try not to biff the grid. I'm Mike here with my buddy Josh, and we are not doing a grid on this episode. This is something a little bit different. We're going to kind of take a look back at the stats from the 2024 season and point out things that you might be able to put on the grid that you couldn't before, or maybe if you could use certain players, there's some new players that you could add to the mix.
This is a bit-free episode. We will not be guessing boxes. And if anything, we're going to help you not biff boxes in the future. Mike said it. We are going to look back at 2024. At the time we're recording right now, the regular season's done. World Series is in full swing. We'll see how it ends. But if this is your first time listening, our normal shtick is Immaculate Grid. We are trying to remember players, share stories. If you are a return listener, then you know the drill. But if you haven't yet, we would love if you could support us in a number of different ways. If you're a podcast listener, leave a review, leave a rating. That really helps other people find the show. We post clips on Instagram, so follow us there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just really appreciate the support. That's a great way to help us find other people like you who love Immaculate Grid. But Mike, I can't believe this season is over. I mean, what a wild year, you know?
I mean, this has been a wild year for so many reasons. Baseball aside, I can't believe we're already at the end of October as of the time of this recording. I feel like that happens every year, and every year it just keeps, the next year goes faster and faster, which I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I mean, as a Mets fan, this was a wild season with, I mean, how many different memes were there for the Mets this year? You had Grimace, you had OMG, you had, I mean, the list is, I'm not going to go through it all, but like the Mets season felt like 6 different seasons in itself. So there's that. Yeah.
I mean, the Mets were like the surprise of the year, but Mets aside, what's like we didn't talk about this prior, but what are a couple of things that stand out to you that just surprise you this year? I mean, for me, it's the Tigers. Like the Tigers absolutely trading their best starting pitcher at the deadline in Jack Flaherty and still making a legit run on the backs of MLB's youngest roster was just wild. And it's really exciting too. That sticks out to me, but what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the Tigers. I will always any success that the Mets have, I have to say, but I'm trying to go outside of my cocoon here. I mean, this isn't that new, but just like every year that they do it, it continues to build on the Guardians and the way they continue to win. Without, adding much payroll, they continue to bring up pitchers who are just effective. That bullpen was ridiculous. So I'm not. I guess I'm going to answer your question with a bit of a twist. I'm not surprised that the Guardians were good again, but it is. I think it's incredible what they're able to build internally. Guys that they plug into the bullpen that weren't there. Like how many new guys came up this year? And actually, I did look this up, and remind me again. Are you covering ERA on this one? Is that one of your?
I'm going to talk about ERA as it pertains to position players. So
but not like sub,
but not pitchers. Okay.
I mean, I remember looking through. I made a list, and I want to say the Guardians led MLB. This is not. Don't quote me on this, but I believe it was the Guardians who led MLB, and I think they had something like 14 different players.
With
the sub 3 ERA, and I think the Brewers were right behind them with 13 players.
I mean, during that ALCS with the Yankees, when they didn't want to use their quote unquote high leverage guys, they're like, oh shucks, we'll have to use Eli Morgan, who had a phenomenal year this year, and would be a high leverage guy for a lot of teams. I mean. What is it? Smith is like a legit closer, could be if it was not for Clase. I mean, Gaddis. I mean, there's every year, you're right. They're just stacked.
Is Tim Herron another one of those guys?
Herron, yeah,
Yeah.
Herron is for sure the lefty. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's an insane bullpen.
Yeah.
It's shocking what the Yankees kind of did to that bullpen in the postseason, but regular season only, just absolutely stacked. I mean,
so it's not, I wouldn't say surprise. I guess another surprising thing was how bad the Rays were.
Yeah.
I had them, I think I might have predicted them to win the division. Not that that's like a hot take, but I didn't think that they would be as bad as they were.
Yeah, I think that surprised a bunch of people. I mean, you just it's sort of a machine where feels like they never really have a truly bad year. They always manage to be very relevant in that division. That was surprising for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So like Mike said, I mean, we're going to call out. So the point is basically, what are those stat thresholds that pop up on Immaculate Grid? And what happened this year in baseball, 2024, that might be noteworthy for you to throw on the grid? If you've got the group chat where you're trying to impress your friends, this is your guide right here. When you're gonna toss that Cole Tucker on the sub-3 ERA, and the boys are gonna go wild. So I mean that's the intent. We're gonna kind of go back and forth, riff on some of the things that stood out for us, but also I will say we're not going to hit it all, and we think we'll do a part 2 of this. So if you have stats we didn't hit from 2024, just shoot us a tweet. I know it's X. I'm still going to call it tweet. Just tweet at us at ordinary_effort_. What were the grid-worthy stats this year that we missed? Basically, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, there's stuff that I have on my list that I'm just not going to go into, but there's a few things that I want to hone in on here. Do you want to start with your position players? Because you kind of, I mean, you talked about.
Hit it, yeah. I'll jump in. So I'm gonna just call out. Listen, there were 26 position players who had a sub-3 ERA this year, because they went into a game, they pitched an inning, and they had a 0 ERA. So when I love looking at these, because when that sub-3 ERA box comes in, I'm just saying, memorize this list. All right. Like we'll tweet out the full list of players, but I'm going to call out some of the guys who did it for the first time in their career, because I feel like there are a good amount of players who, if you scour their baseball reference page, they're like the guy who comes in when it's a blowout game as a position player. Like I always think about Josh Donaldson coming in to pitch for the Yankees, or Brett Phillips, is like a standout guy. Speaking of Brett Phillips, absolutely one of my favorites. We've got a nice little footage of Brett and some other pitchers. So there were 26 pitchers who had a sub-3 position players who had a sub-3 ERA this year pitching. I'll call out some of the ones who did it for the first time. So Austin Hedges from the Guardians, Cole Tucker from the Angels. I think that's like a super one you got to remember. It's a super rare one because he's been back and forth between the majors and the minors for sure. I kind of forgot he was on the Angels. David Bodie, Dominic Smith, Donovan Walton from the Giants, Eddie Alvarez from your Mets.
Did he do it for the Mets, though, or did he do it for the Red Sox? Actually, I think I have this somewhere.
Good question. I think he did it for the Mets. Okay. But, fact check us.
Check into this.
Garrett Hampson, Greg Kissinger, Johnny Pareda, Leo Rivas. There's a ton of names here. Oswaldo Cabrera from my Yankees. Patrick Wisdom. So we'll tweet the full list. Those are those moments I was watching when Miguel Sano did it, and it was just I remember thinking I got to remember this right now because this is going to pop up on the grid.
Yeah.
Mike, did you get that? Or
so Eddie Alvarez did do it for the Mets.
Okay.
I think we had put something up earlier this year. Vidal Brujan, right, with Miami.
Vidal. That's a good little segue, because Vidal would fit into that category of another grid category. So, you play the grid, sub-3 ERA is one. But you also get that minimum 1 inning pitch. So Vidal, he probably got lit up in his outing, something like that, because he didn't.
I don't know if he did.
He didn't reach
the.
He could have let up a run. But there were 54 players or position players who made it in for an inning pitch.
Okay.
So other names on this list we'll tweet out, but Ben Rortvedt, Danny Mendick, Manuel Rivera, a whole slew of names. Mike, are there moments of position players pitching that you remember just stand out this year or beyond?
I mean, the Phillips one that you just pulled up there is one
I mean, that's
that was just really
epic.
entertaining.
Yeah.
I know that Todd Frazier, right? Todd Frazier
Oh yeah.
Pitched, I think, more than once.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who else. What about you? Do you have any that come to mind?
I think Nick Swisher pitched for the
Ooh.
Yankees back in the day. I also the most iconic one I can remember is Anthony Rizzo striking out Freddie Freeman.
Yep.
And just both of them dying laughing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's just that's one for sure. So I mean, like I said, we'll tweet the list. I mean, this is a good little way to hack the grid. Remember some of those players. Also, just a good reminder, you're watching a game and you see a position player come in, time to get the grid notebook out and mark that down. But Mike, you've got some more some legit hitting stats.
So I do, and so I guess since we brought up Brujan, he pitched as a position player. He came in a game for the Marlins. I'm checking here. He did get lit up. He has a 43 ERA. So it wasn't great. He pitched an inning and 2/3, and did not fare well. So you can't use him for sub-3 ERA, but you can use him as pitched an inning for the Marlins. But I thought this was interesting, and I know we've talked about. We have a grid. I don't think it's out yet, but grid we just did where that's going to be coming out soon, where we talk about how we don't use a lot of Marlins for some reason. And we talked about how, one of the earlier grids, I think it was grid 4, we had Marlins MVP and there was one answer, and Giancarlo Stanton got us 100%. We were not pleased about that. And since then I'm not convinced that we're not subconsciously avoiding the Marlins. I mean, granted that they're an expansion team from not that long ago, so there's less of a sample to choose from. But so I've got some stuff.
Let's hear it.
And a couple Marlins made this list. So I want to start with 300 average in a season.
Yeah.
And just generally speaking, there were 32 guys who did that this year. You have your top names. Now, did you mention David Bodie pitched?
I did.
Okay. He also hit over 300 this year.
Okay.
I don't think he had a ton of plate appearances.
David Bodie, save the name.
Right, for the Cubs. So he hit 304 this year. This was the first time in his career that he hit over 300. So that's a new addition to the grid. Aaron Judge and Vlad Guerrero Jr. set career highs this year. Judge hit 322. Vlad hit 323. Both of those were career highs. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. If I can do my math right here, 15 players who hit 300 in a season for the first time in their career. A lot of these are guys who, a lot of them are rookies. First year players. Actually, I'm sorry, no. This is a longer list. I have my color coding mixed up. It's actually, there's 23 players. 23 players this year hit over 300 for the first time, and a lot of these are first-year players. So you have Adrian Del Castillo for the Diamondbacks. You have Luis Angel Acuna for the Mets, hit 308. Aurelvis Martinez went 1 for 3 before getting suspended for the Blue Jays. And these first-timers, as of right now, also have career 300 averages. So you can use them not just for season, but for 300 career for now. I'm sure a lot of these will not stand as these guys get more playing time. Maybe there's a couple 300 here career hitters. We'll look back in 20 years and do a retrospective. But there's a guy on here who he started the year with the Marlins. He ended the year hitting over 300. I think he just won his 3rd consecutive batting title, and that's Luis Arraez. And I'm going to pull up his baseball reference page here because so he's done this before.
Ridiculous.
But this is so he did it obviously with the Twins initially, and here we go. There we go. So he did it with the Twins when he won the batting title in 2022. I thought he had a higher batting average than 316 that year.
But then, that still won the batting title, I think, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. So this is the 3rd consecutive year he's won it. And technically he's won it for 3 different teams. We have to do something. If any other player in history has won the batting title 3 consecutive times with 3 different teams, tweet to us because I don't have that data, but I would imagine there is a list.
I think Jessica Brand, who shout out, has been on the show. I think she tweeted this at the time, and I think we'll find the tweet and we'll reference it when we release this episode. I think he's the first to do it consecutively with 3 different teams. There are other guys, I believe, only a handful who have done it just generally with 3 different teams. I think he's the first to do it 3 years in a row, 3 different teams.
So he is the list. Hit 354 with only the Marlins in 2023, but then he got traded to the Padres this year. Now he only hit 314. But this is interesting. And I don't remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't matter if they split their time between 2 teams and they hit below 300 for one and above 300 for the other, as long as for the season cumulatively, if I could speak here, cumulatively, they would have hit over 300. It counts for either team.
You know what? This is I'm going to be honest. I'm nervous to pick guys
me too.
Who just straddled 2 teams during the year for this exact reason. So
right. Yeah,
if we haven't solved this by the time we released it, let us know. But I think you're right. I think it would count for both teams. But.
The good news is it doesn't matter because he did it in 2023. So, but add to that list now. He hit not only 300 for the season between the Marlins and the Padres, but he did hit over 300 if you only isolate his Padres numbers this year.
Yeah.
And you can see that right here. He hit 318 and 299 on the Marlins. So really slacking, So Luis Arraez now fits for the Padres 300 average season. There's another guy on here I want to get to, but he actually I'll pivot from that. We'll get back to that. Generally speaking, though, I needed to know. This felt like a small amount of players. 32 players felt low. Because you generally get. My thought is you generally get a lot of these call ups. They might get 3 at bats, like Robles Martinez did, and you'll get these rogue guys with like a very tiny sample size. So I was like, how low is this relative to recent years? So just for fun, and this is where my stats, this is like itching that stats part of my brain.
A little evening activity.
Yeah, no, not a big deal. So this is the lowest total by far. Well, so, 2024, there were 32 players. This is the lowest amount going back to at least 2014. I stopped there because I felt like that was enough. Last year, there were 33 players. So there was one less player this year. And in 2022, there were 43 players. But then there's this crazy jump where in 2021, there were 78 players who hit over 300. And I was thinking, does this have anything to do with, before there was the universal DH? Could it have been that, maybe a relief pitcher got an at bat and got a hit? I know Tommy Hunter batted 1,000 one year for the Mets. I think it was 2021. He had one at bat and he got on base with a hit. So there's that. True. But 2021, we already had the universal DH. Oh. So it wasn't that. If you have a theory on why this might be the case, because tweet it to us because
we need the theory. Yeah.
All right, so 2021, there were 78 players. In 2020, even in the 60-game season, 72. Well, average can fluctuate more easily.
Sure.
Raw, counting stats. 72 players in 2020, 75 in 2019. I'm not going to go through all these, but 2017 there were 91 players, and 2015 there were 96 players. So there were literally 3 times more players who hit 300 or above in 2015 as there were in 2024. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and important to call out here, like if you found this episode and you're not like necessarily like a regular grid player, like we're talking like no minimum at bats, right? Like so it's
no,
like
no
obviously
qualifiers.
we're not talking about the qualifying for the batting title here, but like that's still
right.
wild. Like you'd think, to your point, you'd have more people coming up and having a couple of bats, and instead of being sent back down or something like that. That's wild. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it has something to do with the shift.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it has something to do with the shift.
True.
Because it was banned going into 2023. This is the second season we've had without the shift, right?
Yeah. So, but you would think though that the average should go up, no? Like,
oh wait, no, that's right. Yeah, that's backwards. Yeah.
No, but it's just bizarre. Yeah. We gotta. I mean, that's our dissertation now. Like, what happened to all the hits? Like,
this is the reason I will lose sleep on this particular night. So yeah, I mean, but I thought that was interesting that we've literally gone down. But I mean, there were triple the amount of 300 hitters in 2015 as we saw this year.
Yeah. All right. Good one, Mike. I'm gonna study the list for sure. That one kills me. Like I just have a hard time remembering who's hit that threshold.
And again, we'll tweet the fuller list here, but there were a few good names on there.
Yeah. I'm gonna hit a pitching category that kind of always burns me, and it's 200 strikeouts in a season. I just feel like doing this research for this episode gave me an appreciation for like that's a really hard threshold to hit. I think it was like a couple weeks ago. I biffed a box multiple times because I was so sure that these pitchers hit 200 strikeouts that I was just like, well, I got to look this up more. So let's break it down. So this season, 2024, there were 11 pitchers who had 200 strikeout season. I didn't do the research to know how that compares to previous years, but just anecdotally, I was surprised by that. I forget that that's a really hard threshold to do. Yeah. I'm just going to rattle off the names because there are some you would guess, some you would not, I think. But Chris Sale,
Sale,
guess as many as you can.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, there's 11?
There's 11 of them. So you got Sale. You got
Sale. I know Cole Riggins did it. I think
he's one.
You said it, or I looked it up earlier too. But actually, I compiled this list, but it was like so long ago. I don't remember who was on it. Let me see if I can remember, and I won't look. Scooble.
Yeah, he's on there. Scooble.
Wheeler's
on there. Yeah.
Sale, Scooble, Wheeler, Riggins.
I think you hit the big ones. Some of the rest of the ones like are a mixed bag.
Like I'm trying to think of who. Strider was out this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Lugo threw a lot of innings, but did not have quite the K rate. Is Michael King on this list?
That's the one. Michael King. I mean, if you're going to circle a name to use in a future grid, Michael King had 201 strikeouts. So he just met the threshold. Okay. And I think that's out of the list. I'm going to give you some of the other names.
I'm sorry. Hunter Greene? I know he's a big strikeout guy.
Hunter Greene is not on the list.
No,
I think it's really like a injury, kind of like time spent kind of thing. He missed a little bit of time this year, I think.
Okay.
Well, we're going to hit Hunter Greene in a sec. But so Dylan Cease, Freddie Peralta, just got 200.
200 even?
200 even. So he's another good one. Although I think Freddie's had 200 before. Actually, I can tell you, that's not his first time reaching the threshold. But Garrett Crochet, it is his first time, 209 strikeouts. Logan Gilbert, 220 strikeouts. Really good year. Michael King, you said. I mean, that's the one I think I would circle to use on your grids. Sonny Gray, 203 strikeouts. It surprised me.
Didn't he start the year on the IL?
He did.
So he did. Okay, so he did it even in a somewhat shorter season. Wow. Okay.
And it's not his first time doing it, but that was surprising to me. And the last one we didn't already mention is Yusei Kikuchi. It is his first time doing it.
Oh, wow. You could have given me
206 strikeouts. Yeah, I would have never guessed it.
I know he's a
really,
decent. I knew he was a decent strikeout guy. You probably could have given me 30 guesses, and I don't know that I would have pulled him. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll put the list, but 11 pitchers this year had 200 strikeouts or more. Again, I think like you get that box, you want to try to avoid like, Wheeler, Chris Sale. But I mean, if you could throw Michael King on the grid for 200 strikeouts, then that's gonna, depending on what it's paired with, that's pretty good. So
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And Kikuchi, if they don't count with teams, he got traded from Toronto to Houston this year.
Exactly.
So that's a twofer.
So he could work for both. Yeah. Good call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's very good to know.
I've got one more pitcher, but let's go back to some hitting stuff.
Okay. So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back to the Marlins because
love it.
Well, okay. I'm gonna kind of split this a little bit. Marlins, the next stat I did was 30 stolen bases, and this is a shorter list, which I'm a little bit surprised about because you've got the bigger bases now. You've got
you'd think
the balk rule where a pitcher can only throw over twice, and if he doesn't pick the runner off on the third attempt, the batter gets the base. I thought there would have been more players, but there were 24 guys who stole 30 or more bases this season. 15 of them did it for the first time this year. So you've got Brenton Doyle on the Rockies. You've got Bryce Terang on Milwaukee, Dayron Blanco for the Royals, which is one Royal connection. Another Royal is Bobby Witt Jr. Yeah. Now, I'm going to go back to him because he's going to come up again with my third stat. And then you have the names on here that do not surprise. Ellie De La Cruz stole 67 bases. Obviously, Shohei stole 59. But a guy that appears on this list and the 300 average in a season list on Miami is Xavier Edwards. Okay. And so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, was he one of the guys in the Arraez trade that went from the Padres to, because he was drafted by the Padres?
He could have been, yeah. I think you're right.
Okay, so
it would make sense. I know in that trade, I feel like because of that, a couple of those guys ended up, we're going to get like playing time right away kind of thing, and it kind of rings a bell.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to pull this up here because this really kind of stood out to me quite a bit. So, Xavier Edwards did not start the season in the majors, I think. I'm sorry. Okay, so he didn't get traded for Arraez. He was on the Marlins in 2023. And he had 84 plate appearances. This season, he only had 303 plate appearances, and he stole 31 bases, which is bananas.
That, like, pace. I mean,
figure if you, let's say roughly there's a full season of at bats is 600, give or take. I mean, he played in 70 games, so it's probably, I guess if you're hitting at the top of the lineup, probably give him a few more, but double it and then add a couple. So I don't know, 65-ish. I'm doing rough math in my head.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. But so in half a season's worth of at-bats and 70 games, he stole 31 bases. On top of it, he hit 328.
But I was just going to say, like, he had if I'm reading that right, 397 on base percentage.
397 on base
percentage. He had to steal that many bases in a short, short amount of time playing. I mean, that's wild. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, so... I mean, he didn't have many extra base hits. He had 5 triples, but he had 18 total extra base hits out of 87 total hits. So what's that? I mean, that's under 25% of his hits. So 75% plus of his hits were singles. Maybe there were I'm sure there was a time, excuse me, where he stole second and then third.
Yeah.
But I mean, just the fact that he had 31 steals in 300 plate appearances is I mean, that's something.
Yeah.
And so you can use him for Marlins 30 plus steals in a season. You can use him for Marlins 300 batting average in a season. You can use him for 300 average and 30 steals. You can use him. Very impressive season for Xavier Edwards, and not somebody that, at least for me, would come to mind readily, especially like if you know the name, but you also know he probably didn't play the full season, you'd probably shy away from him. Don't shy away from him. Put him on the grid because he fits several boxes.
Yeah. Xavier Edwards, grid legend. Also, if I'm right, Mike, you can use him for right now at least 300 career average.
Right. Yes. As of now,
as of right now in this, this time frame.
And he's probably got a slump in him too, where he would still qualify because he's got a career 321 average.
Yeah.
And so Xavier Edwards is a good one. Trying to just pull Jazz Chisholm here. First time he split. First time he had 30 plus steals. He stole 40 between the Marlins and the Yankees. Who else do you have on here? Zach Neto for the Angels, Jarren Duran, first time for the Red Sox, Jacob Young for the Nationals, Dylan Moore for the Marlins. Oh, and Victor Robles did it for the Marlins. He split time with the Marlins. I'm sorry, not the Marlins. Did I say Dylan Moore for the Marlins? I've done this before where I've said I've meant Mariners and said Marlins and vice versa. Dylan Moore did it for the Marlins. Nope, I did it.
Mariners.
and Victor Robles had some kind of crazy career renaissance when he went from the Nationals to the Mariners. Actually, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna, and then I'll kick it back to you for your next stat. But Victor Robles stole 30 bases after going to Seattle. If you look at the splits here, he stole 30 bases in 262 plate appearances. So even a better rate than Xavier Edwards did. He hit 328 for the Marlins. Mariners, Robles hit 328 for the Mariners. He also hit over 300 this season. So Xavier Edwards and Victor Robles are both guys that you can use for 300 average and 30 steals in a season.
No one who listens to this episode should ever use Ronald Acuna for steals again. I mean, Mike's dropping people. You never have to use Acuna. You never have to use Juan Pierre or
Hanley Ramirez. Don't do it. Xavier Edwards and who would be for the Mariners? Did Griffey was he a stolen base guy?
I think he was just like maybe earlier in his career. I mean, towards the end, he was just too hurt.
A-Rod?
A-Rod, yeah.
Well, whoever you used to... Oh, Ichiro. Yeah, don't use Ichiro anymore. Use Victor Robles for the Mariners 30 steals season box.
Yeah. Love it. All right, let's keep it going. I'm going to close out my portion with WAR because those WAR boxes just sometimes throw me. So, of course, Immaculate Grid, you got 6+ WAR in a season and then 40+ WAR in a career. So, I've been focusing on pitchers. So, I pulled the pitchers who had a 6+ WAR this season. Mike, I'm going to give you a chance to guess. Oh. There are 4 pitchers who had a 6+ WAR this season.
I feel like there's got to be a lot of overlap. Like these, first of all,
there's a decent amount of overlap.
Yeah, to hit that 200 strikeouts threshold, that's like a dying breed of pitcher with the way you have openers and bullpen games and guys limiting innings and stuff. I mean, 6 WAR. I don't even know what factors into WAR. I don't know what the calculation is. Yeah,
no. I mean, you just got 6 WAR is like you had a really good year. I mean,
I will say this: I know that 6 WAR, the threshold of 6 WAR for a pitcher. I've biffed that box thinking like
that's why I picked it. That's why I picked it because it's like Aaron Judge probably going to win the MVP. I think he had almost a 10 WAR. Like Bobby Witt had like a 9. Gunnar Henderson like an 8 point something.
Yeah,
there are a lot more hitters that hit the 6 WAR threshold this year.
Yeah,
it was only 4. So
4 pitcher. Okay, so wait. So hold on. They're not.
Let me just give you a little.
Not all on this. They're not all on the 200 strikeouts list.
3 out of
Okay.
4 of them are. 3 out
Okay.
of 4 of
So
them are.
Scooble
Yeah.
and Sale, because did they both win? I know Scooble won the Triple Crown. Did Sale also win the Triple Crown?
It's a good
feel like I should
question.
know
We'll have to
this.
fact check it. But
I'll
yeah,
pull
but
it up.
you're right. Scooble and Sale are 2 of them.
I don't want to guess Michael. I'm gonna not guess Michael King.
That's correct. He didn't do it. Yeah.
I don't know who are the other two.
Zach Wheeler is
Okay.
the third, and then I think the most surprising. You mentioned him earlier, Hunter Greene. Hunter
For
Greene had a
WAR?
6.3 WAR in 2024. I think
What?
I kind of slept on what a good year he had. I mean, even if you just take this top line baseball reference stats, right? Like, I mean, he had a 2.75 ERA, 1.01 WHIP. He had 169 strikeouts in 150 innings pitched.
Okay.
So, I mean, he had a really solid year after like what I feel like was a fairly like just objectively like my anecdotally rather like my recollection was last year was sort of like a disappointment.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I guess he pitched
4.82 ERA.
112 innings last year. So, injuries have always been like sort of a thing for him, but he's only 24 years old. Like, I
That's
mean,
crazy.
that's
Yeah.
wild. Like that he's got,
But the other thing here, he only threw 150 innings. He didn't go back to his win total.
I mean,
He
he
didn't.
had
He had
9
9 wins.
wins.
What? How does this?
We
This
got to
doesn't make
get
sense to me.
someone on the show who does more about WAR to explain it to us. But I mean, check this out. Like, I mean, last year he had a 0.9 WAR. 2022 he had a 2 WAR. I mean, this year it is 6.3. It also that ties for the most out of a pitcher. So Scooble had a 6.3 WAR. Hunter Greene had a 6.3. Chris Sale 6.2. Zach Wheeler 6.1.
Hold on.
I mean,
sorry. No, keep. I'm not going to
no,
cut you off, but I'm noticing something else here.
Yeah. The short of it is like if you're going to do 6 WAR, Hunter Greene is going to be a rare score. I mean, like you gotta think about Hunter Greene for 6 WAR.
So I noticed before while you still had it up, he hit 19 batters. He led, and I think it was bolded and italicized.
It
That means
is.
he led in
All of
150 innings. He led Major League Baseball in hit batters. If you know how pitching WAR is calculated, please tweet us and explain this because that is baffling. But that makes him a great.
I'll drop my cell phone. Just call me. Like I need
to wake me up in the middle of the night. Bring me something to eat, and let's talk about this because that's wow.
I'm going to give one bonus. One bonus that has nothing to do with pitching. So,
okay.
After I was digging into WAR for the season, I wanted to know, like, were there any players who, because of this year's performance, they jumped over that 40 WAR threshold? So the other, box on the grid is 40 plus WAR career.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to see if any pitchers met that threshold. Now, there are current pitchers who meet that threshold right now. Garrett Cole is the one that comes to mind right now. He's already past 40 WAR. Mm-hmm. There weren't any pitchers this year who passed 40 as a result of this season's performance. But there are 2 hitters who you can now use on 40 plus WAR. Wow. So they are. I don't even know. I mean, Mike, I don't even know if you want to guess. It's not even because
the thing is, that means I would have to know that they were in the ballpark of 40 WAR.
It's not even when you hear the names. It's not even a reflection that they had necessarily like a fantastic year this year. That they just were close. So Xander Bogaerts has now a 40.8 WAR.
Okay.
So throw Xander down on 40 plus WAR career. He had 1.2 WAR this year. And then this is a surprising one, but just because of this year, Christian Yelich has a 41.9 WAR. And he had a 2.2 WAR this year. So both of those guys now can be used on 40 plus WAR.
Now his season was cut short too, so
it was.
Yeah, and he's had a couple seasons cut short due to injury. I mean, obviously,
you have to figure like his MVP year. Was like. I'm looking it up now. Like, had to be
6+
in that. Like, it had to be 6+. I mean, if you figure like Bobby Witt just put up a 8 or a 9. I mean, let's see. So I mean, his MVP year is 7.3.
Solid.
He had 7 the year after. And then just injuries,
Yeah. He's going to be one of those guys where, 10
yeah,
years, 10, 15 years from now, we're going to say, what might he have done if he could have stayed
yeah,
healthy? Him, Mike Trout.
yeah.
Yeah.
Christian Yelich. But yeah, I mean, he does fit the 40-plus WAR now, and so does Xander Bogaerts. So yeah, use
All
them
right.
both, and they work.
So you mentioned Bobby Witt. I've mentioned Bobby Witt. I want to go back to Bobby Witt. I'm sorry.
Time to talk about him.
Are you
It's all the gems
okay?
I've got to drop.
Oh, okay, great.
Take us
So
home. Yeah.
this is a short list, but the last one I rounded up with was 200 hits in a season. There were 2 players who did it: Bobby Witt Jr. and Luis Arraez.
Yeah.
Arraez again. Actually, I need to look up if he had to have passed the 200 hit threshold.
He did. He did.
With
He
the other
hit 200 this
teams.
year.
Okay, so but out of the three stat groups that I mentioned today, 300 plus average in a season, 30 stolen bases in a season, 200 plus hits in a season, Bobby Witt Jr. fits all of them.
Which is just absolutely ridiculous.
And I'm going to bring him up here. I mean, obviously he's only played for one team. So if you get a only one team and 300 average season, or only one team 30 steals, only one team 200 hits, Bobby Witt Jr. is your guy. If you have the intersection of those boxes, Bobby Witt Jr. is your guy. He's got the WAR.
It's insane. I mean,
his WAR this year was 9.4. Bobby Witt Jr. is your guy. Yeah,
I mean, Mike, he played 161 games.
161 games. OPS plus of 171. I don't know what, I know 100 is average. I feel like 171 is insane unless you're Aaron Judge, and it might have been over 200, or Ohtani maybe. But yeah, I mean, Bobby Witt Jr. had, I'll be honest, I mean, and I'm talking a little bit from a fantasy perspective, but I was unsure about Bobby Witt. Not that I questioned the talent, but he wasn't a big OBP guy. Actually, you had him on your team this year, right?
I did.
He wasn't a big OBP guy in past years, and I was like, I don't know, if he can't get on base, that's going to kind of limit that ceiling. And this year, I mean,
look at the jump. 294, 319, 389.
Right. And so actually, let me group this here. So the 2 years prior to this year, his career on base was 307.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this year, his on base percentage was 389. So he really leveled up probably multiple times this year. He's taken himself right to the top of, he's one of the best young players, and he's also 24 years old. So
I mean, look at the strikeouts too, Mike. I mean, I think you and I were talking a couple of years ago back in fantasy about if he's gonna, he's kind of not getting on base as much. He's taking the strikeouts down. I mean, I'm obviously biased. I had Bobby Witt on my fantasy team, like you said, but he's just he's probably, if I could take my fandom out of it without the Yankees, if it's not that Aaron Judge has had a ridiculous year, I mean, he should be the MVP. I mean, literally more hits than anybody in Major Leagues, the highest batting average, doing it from the shortstop position. I mean, and from a true value to the team, the Royals just quite simply just don't make the playoffs without him. I mean, it's just
also
insane.
Minor detail. I don't think I've ever seen a grid box that mentions this, but he had 11 triples this year.
Yeah.
How many guys are hitting? I feel like triples and is not a dying breed type of player, but maybe I'm just not paying attention. It's quite possible I'm not paying enough attention to who's hitting triples, but I just feel like I don't witness a lot of triples. Maybe I'm watching the wrong games. But he hit 11. So the strikeouts thing too, he had over 700 plate appearances and cut his strikeouts negligible amount by 15 from last year. With 15 more plate appearances. So Bobby Witt Jr., I don't need to tell you how good he is, but he really took it to the next level this year.
Yeah. Just a special kind of player. Mike, this was fun. I mean,
this was a lot.
we could probably talk about this for hours. Like,
yeah.
So I mean, I will say this: like we said at the beginning, like we're going to do a part 2 of this, perhaps like after we hear from you. So like if you have some stats of things people achieved in 2024 that you're putting on the grid or that should be on like our grid notebook, like tweet us at ordinary effort _. Also, just like if we missed something, we messed something up, or you just like had a moment you want us to remember, follow us on Twitter, tweet at us. I mean, this is like this is what we do when we are not recording grid, is just researching the grid, eat, sleep, live grid.
Yeah. This really, I know when we started this, I said like, oh, I'm a former stats analyst, which is true. But this this was more fun for me than it probably should have been, diving into all these stats. Ordinary Effort on Instagram. Check us out on YouTube if you're listening. Check out our podcast if you're watching, like Josh said. And we're gonna do some more of these style episodes too, because the grids are fun. But talking about things that you can do on grids turns out to also be fun.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And
stay ordinary.
Stay ordinary.